So let's move on to Syria then, and we're going to start off with a little bit of video. Do you want to just introduce this briefly?
Yeah, this is basically the latest Israeli attack that I'm quite sure nobody will have heard of in Western media. The BBC will not have covered this. This was 2 nights ago at around 8 o'clock at night. Israel attacked Aleppo International Airport from the Mediterranean coastal waters, and then 1 hour later attacked or tried to attack Damascus International Airport. So this is the attack filmed by an amateur, obviously, on Aleppo International Airport. So Aleppo International Airport did suffer material damage. There was damage to the runways. I was told today that the airport will be up and functional again or operational within 2 days. So it hasn't caused any lasting damage, and it's being dealt with just as quickly as, of course, they dealt with previously the attacks on Damascus International Airport. Um, what is Israel trying to do? I mean, as I said, this was not reported. I couldn't find a report anywhere in Western media, only in the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is an opposition or terrorist biased outlet based in the UK, funded by the EU. They do state that 4 Israeli shells hit a runway of the airport in Aleppo. But the interesting thing here, of course, there you also get the fact that there is a claim that it was Iranian missiles that were hit, which is totally nonsense. But interesting that here they also claim that Russian and Syrian government forces were positioned at the airport. This is true. Russia used to actually have planes at this airport, not any longer. It now has a sort of skeleton staff and office there. But this is quite interesting because this is probably the first time that Israel has directly targeted an area that may have contained Russian military personnel. The report does also say that Israel gave a 10-minute warning or a warning to the Russians that were there to be able to evacuate from the area. That also is standard practice between Russia and Israel. Um, Now, what I really want to talk about here today is this continuing discourse, much of it on Twitter, I have to say, about uh, the perceived view that Russia is not doing enough to come to the aid of Syria during these Israeli attacks. The number one point I will make, of course, is that Russia, above all, respects Syrian sovereignty, and it is very careful to allow Syria to defend itself at every single opportunity. And Syria does a very good job of defending itself. The majority of the missiles, for example, that after the Aleppo airport attack, 1 hour later, they tried to target Damascus International Airport. Those missiles were intercepted and brought down, and Damascus Airport was kept safe. Um, but I want to look at a story that has been circulating both in Israeli and American media, particularly, but has even been picked up within the independent media community. So this satellite image was published on Twitter by an organization called ImageSat International, um, claiming to show that Russia was redeploying its S-300 from close to Mesyaf. Now remember, Mesyaf Research Center was targeted by Israel 1 week ago now. And this was then picked up by if we actually look at who ISI are, they're a space based intelligence world leader. Where are they based? In Israel. So this is Israeli intelligence basically leading with this story. The story is then picked up by Pentagon-aligned American war and defense sites like the war zone. Now, the title here is particularly misleading. So it says Russia pulls its Syrian S-300 missile battery and ships it to the Black Sea. Now, I'll get on to exactly how many S-300s are inside Syria in a minute, but let's look at who's providing the intelligence for this article. Number one, of course, it's coming in from Ukrainian media like the Kiev Independent. Ukrainian intelligence, Russia has no more than 45%, sorry, I have to smile at this point, of its missiles left. And effectively, the claim here is that Russia needs this S-300 battalion back in Ukraine to, to enable it to continue in the conflict in Ukraine. So it's running out of missiles, apparently, according to this article. And it then goes on to say, regardless, Russia's decision to recall these missiles from Syria signals a dire need in its ongoing special military operation. They had a purpose, deterrent, symbolic or otherwise, in Syria that Israel underscored within days of the missiles' departure. Now, a point I need to make here, this battery was withdrawn after the attack on the Masyaf Research Center, so not before the attack on the research center. The article is trying to claim that Israel took advantage of the withdrawal of this S-300 battalion to carry out further attacks. Well, it didn't attack the Masyaf Research Center, it attacked Aleppo and it attacked Damascus. It then goes on to say to shift such high profile resource and leave a major ally exposed shows both Russia's laser focus on its increasingly precarious all out invasion of Ukraine and the level of priority it now puts on its involvement in Syria and the Assad regime. This is ridiculous. Russia has been an ally of, or the Soviet Union has been an ally of Syria for decades. And it's one of the reasons that this war is happening. Russia, from a pragmatic realpolitik perspective, is not going to abandon Syria. Syria is the gateway to Eurasia. But even from a historical military, bilateral agreement, it's not going to abandon Syria. In fact, military collaboration is extending and expanding within Syrian territory at the moment between Syria and Russia. Now, I've spoken to various people who have basically said to me the chances are that this particular battalion is being withdrawn in order to potentially be replaced by an updated version to increase the defense. But what is also important to make very clear here, Russia has deployed S-300s in Syria to defend its own positions, to defend Haimamin base, to defend Russian troop deployment inside Syria. Syria, however, has and it owns 4 battalions of S-300s. Now, what are the S-300s? So each battalion of S-300 system includes long-range radar to detect hostile targets, a vehicle that analyzes data, 6 vehicles that act as missile launchers. Each vehicle carries 6 missiles and a short-range radar that tracks targets and directs missiles towards them. 2 missiles can be fired at each target within a time difference of no more than 3 seconds. The S-300 can deal with 24 aircraft or 16 ballistic missiles and has a range of 250 kilometers. Putting a battalion into engagement mode and dealing with hostile targets takes no more than 5 minutes when on the move, which is a very short time. Why are the S-300s that Syria has and that Russia is not taking away from Syria, why are they not being deployed? Well, I'll continue with this in a minute, but it's important to understand that Iran has also supplied missile defense systems to Syria from 2018 onwards, the Bavar 373, which has very similar technical capability to the S-300. In fact, it's potentially between the S-300 and the S-400. This also hasn't been deployed yet. against Israeli hostility. Why? Because Syria knows full well that there is very probably going to be increased escalation in the future. Why is Israel carrying out these attacks now? It's trying to probe. It's one, trying to destroy Syria's economic capability by destroying the airports, but it's also destroying early warning radar systems, air defense bases or areas of air defense bases, launch pads in military air bases, etc. It's effectively trying to, one, destroy Syria's defense capability should there be an escalation. And there is, of course, escalation now with Hezbollah over the gas fields, etc. And it's also trying to probe to see where the Iranian and the S-300 are, right? And for this reason, it also, what it does is it inundates Syria with missiles so that to some degree the air defense can respond to a certain number and then it has to reload. And at that point, Israel is able to target that area. Okay, so in my view, and in the view of many military experts here, Syria is simply not using these because it doesn't want to reveal where they are at this point in the conflict with Israel. They also have the Savom Cordad, which is equivalent to the BUK system from the Soviet Union. And of course, Syria is defending itself predominantly with the Pantsir S-1s, and it's doing a very adequate job with that. But I think, the important thing here is to quash this idea that Russia is abandoning Syria in any way, shape, or form, or that it doesn't allow Syria to use the S-300s. Whatever decisions are made over air defense are joint decisions with Syria in ascendancy. In other words, Syrian sovereignty is respected at all times. Now, what is also interesting is that Israel, through its various media, has at times claimed that Iran has used advanced air defense batteries against Israel and Syria. Again, according to my sources, not true. But this is justification for Israel to target Syria to try and eliminate what it deems as hostile Iranian military equipment inside Syria. Now, interesting language used in this Jerusalem Post article, war between war operations. This confirms the fact that Israel sees this as a sort of hiatus between wars, between the previous war, but it certainly perceives that there is another war coming with Syria, and that sort of bolsters my idea or my speculation that Syria is not using its more sophisticated air defense in order to keep the positioning hidden from Israel. Also, here, interesting, the IAF has carried out thousands of strikes on Syria since 2013, around 23 strikes already this year. None of them, of course, are protested by the UN or by any human rights organizations, and also has carried out strikes in Iraq and Yemen, again, very rarely mentioned in Western media. Now, I just want to cover a couple of other things that people are getting a little bit confused about. In Idlib, the government has basically put together a comprehensive settlement for everyone who wants to lay down arms in Idlib. It includes all the people of Idlib province who are in the areas controlled by the terrorists in the north or outside Syria, which includes Turkey, including military and civilians. Citizens wishing to settle will be received in Khan Sheikhoun, which is in southern Idlib, under the control of the Syrian Arab Army and the Russians and the Syrian government from Monday, September the 5th. This is in correlation with the fact that the government now is alleviating pressure on conscripts into the army. So this is an indication that the government now is taking its foot off the pedal of the military operations, except, of course, for special operations in the northeast. The other aspect, which is being hotly debated, particularly on Twitter, is whether there is going to be an imminent meeting between President Assad and President Erdogan. Erdogan and Turkey and his foreign minister have indeed been pushing a sort of rapprochement with Syria, but it's based on pressure, basically. Erdogan is facing an election in Turkey in June 2023. He was told very clearly at the summit in July, on July the 19th in Tehran, that if he entered Syria or if he continued with the military operation against the Kurdish separatists, then he would be fighting not only Syria but Russia and Iran. So he's backed off on that. He's now making statements along the lines of diplomacy can never be cut off. Ankara needs to secure further steps with Syria, and he's backtracked completely on his original goal from 2011 to 2012 that he no longer wishes to defeat Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. This is coming because the power balance has shifted completely. And Erdogan knows that he needs President Assad, he needs Syria in order to deal with the Kurdish separatist issue. And he also needs President Assad to work with him on political solutions in order to hopefully lead to his re election in June 2023. He needs to be able to deal with the refugee situation, 5 million Syrian refugees inside Turkey that Erdogan needs to deal with. That's a major issue for his election campaign. Also, the Turkish opposition is snapping at his heels and they're scenting blood. So the Turkish opposition has been pushing for meetings with Bashar al Assad. So Erdogan basically is being pushed gradually more and more into a corner as regards Syria. And I don't think we're going to see an imminent meeting. My view is that President Assad, who's a long term strategist, will wait and see what's happening leading up to the election before he makes any decision to have a public meeting with either, well, with the Turkish ruling party, whoever it may be.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. Thank